we're kind of talking about the different ways that they can win, I think we did see some adjustments from Kyle Shanahan, even though the win itself like followed the same program of get up early, and be able to kind of like ride the lead from there, rely on your defense, but also play complementary football. I think there was a major distinction, and it's something that at least I know you and I have been talking about for quite some time, which is, hey, Kyle, spread the ball around. More people exist besides Christian McCaffrey, and they're actually really, really, really good on your team. I don't understand why George Kittle doesn't get a minimum. I mean, last on Sunday, yesterday, he got 4 targets. He led the team in reception yards, performed incredibly. If you give him a 50-50 ball, he's going to come down with it. He's going to make you look great. I do not understand why, like, in the losing streak, they lost Deebo Samuel, they lost Trent Williams, and George Kittle got 2 targets one of those games. Like, that is so frustrating to me. I feel like there should never be a game for the rest of the season that Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle do not get at least 4 targets. And to me, I feel like that's pretty low. Like, I feel like I tweeted out, and maybe this is hyperbolic, but I was like, he needs 10 targets a game. I don't understand. But I felt like Kyle Shanahan relied on the passing game a bit more than his run game, and kind of call the balanced offense and really spread it around to his playmakers, which, like I said, one, just made it more exciting to watch, but 2, was actually very effective. So did you notice that adjustment? How do you feel about it? And do you think it'll be something that Kyle Shanahan sticks with going forward?
I mean, I don't know if that was necessarily an adjustment. I feel like that's something we have seen throughout the season, and I think it just it tells you how much trust Kyle Shanahan has in Brock Purdy. Like, they had the 2nd and inches when George Kittle caught that touchdown, right? And it was a beautiful play. But just the balls to go for that on a 2nd and inches when you have Christian McCaffrey, and you could have probably just as easily gotten the first down with a run, but they went for that play, right? Like, I think it tells you a number of different things, and I think it starts with the trust that Kyle has in Brock. So I think in Kyle's eyes, it's like, hey, I have someone who can run these plays for us and make these throws for us, and so why not why not see what happens if I call this play right now? So I think it's great, because I think it allows Kyle Shanahan to call games a little more freely. And I mean, I love that development, and I think if it's one that we've seen all year. The issue with the losses were that you weren't getting like complementary football. Like, the run game wasn't successful, and so they were throwing and throwing, but it was married with a bad run game, right? So it was harder to eventually get good, I guess, like, momentum out of the pass game, and especially because it feels like the opposing defenses kind of just knew what to expect. But going back to, what you mentioned about George Kittle getting targets, I mean, the 49ers, like, I'm looking at their pass attempts per game, and they actually averaged the least of any team,
Yeah.
28.1. Right? So given that, like, you think about all the weapons that they have as well, it is kind of hard to, like, spread the ball around, or sorry, it's hard to continue to target one guy over and over when you're not even throwing that much to begin with. Like, say 28, 30 throws a game, you're not going to have 1/3 of those go to George Kittle every time. Sometimes if, like, the opponent you're going up against calls for it, sure. But I actually like that Brock Purdy's a guy who kind of spreads the ball around. I mean, we saw everyone but Christian McCaffrey get a touchdown on Sunday. And it just speaks to all the weapons that they have, right? And so I like that they spread the ball around. I do agree. Like, I think one of the better developments of not having Deebo out there is, I think, like, the previous 2 games, not counting the one on Sunday. Like, I feel like they rediscovered George Kittle. And even though he wasn't getting a ton of targets, his catches were impactful, right? Like, they were big plays. or
Yeah,
just like really important key plays
they were
in the
keeping the
game.
drive alive for sure.
Exactly. So I feel like they rediscovered that. I feel like we saw it again despite just 3 catches, right? Like we saw it again on Sunday. And so to me, like he doesn't need a ton of targets, but as long as those targets and those catches are like valuable to the team, and so far they have been, they've made a big difference. I think the 49ers would be really happy with that.
I think it would be smart going forward because the 49ers did pass the ball way more than they normally would on Sunday's game against the Jaguars. And I think that that should be something that they stick with. When you look at previous Super Bowl contenders in the last 5 years or 10 years, I've seen this stat on Twitter, but I might be not quoting it correctly. But I think most quarterbacks have thrown like a minimum of, they have like a lot of pass attempts compared to what the 49ers are used to. So I feel like maybe leaning on a more passing, like a stronger passing attack in this offense could be smart, because if you have so many weapons, why would you not utilize them? To me, this offense is only more effective when you're getting guys like George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel involved. Even Christian McCaffrey, I felt like when we're talking about adjustments, I felt like passing him the ball more than just handing it off to him was really effective yesterday. Do you think, because I think that the 49ers, I think the addition of Trent Williams also was so impactful. It's kind of funny when a backup comes in and performs pretty well. I think I can be like, oh, like good, like he's not doing bad. And then when you see Trent Williams in there, you're like, oh, like the difference is so stark. I felt like the 49ers really beat up the Jaguars on both sides of the trenches on both sides of the ball, but that offensive line looked really good. I thought John Feliciano was really good. I wonder when Aaron Banks shows back up. I wonder how they'll add him to the rest of the line. I imagine maybe they'll sub him in for Burford, who did have that one effort play that I thought was really where the announcers called it like the one man tush push, because Christian McCaffrey was like stopped, and then you saw Christian McCaffrey like try to keep going, and then just Burford just like pushes him, and there's like 5 Jaguars players, and they ended up getting the first down. So I really do, that's what I mean. Like when you, not just on defense, but when you looked at yesterday's team, like the effort and energy was just so there, which is really impressive because that was an early body clock game. Obviously, they
Yeah.
had a bye week to like mentally prepare. But when you think about the Jaguars, also had a bye week to prepare, and they weren't adjusting to flying across the country in the early body clock. I just felt so excited when I was watching them. But you kind of mentioned something that you